So it's weird because it's like the creation stories of that culture comes from that area. And so like what's really interesting, I don't know if you read that or saw or anything, but the one in Mexico City, they reference a creation story where the Aztecs came from 7 different types of species that were created and were to be dispersed around the world. And they were the last of the 7 to come out from a cave that had 7 caverns. If you go to the Pyramid of the Sun, they found, I can't remember when, but I want to say it was like in the last like 30, 40 years, a cave way inside of it, exactly 7 caverns. We're doing here is discuss specifically Pyramid of the Sun, but to also discuss the entirety of the Teotihuacan. That's going to be a hard one to say. I will do my best throughout this discussion, but Teotihuacan, that is a vaster complex, kind of like, think of it as like a mini city, pretty big, at least I think. And Pyramid of the Sun is part of this big entire piece of land. There's also the Pyramid of the Moon, and there's also the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent. Those are the 3 big pyramids, and this is located in Mexico, formerly occupied by the Aztecs. Some archaeologists date this back to about, I don't know, anywhere between 2 and I think 9 AD. However, we can discuss throughout this why that is probably not true. And so it's just this mysterious kind of part of our ancient civilization in the Mexico area, which of course, America, that's like so many pyramids down there, right? And so we're going to focus on that here tonight and all of the different, just amazing things, really, I think, that are down there in the Teotihuacan.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Teotihuacan is going to be, no disrespect to any Spanish-speaking individuals out there, difficult to say. It's interesting when you look at like the size of it, because in perspective, and then the aerial of it, and then like from there to like, was the Road of the Dead or the Highway of the Dead?
Avenue of the Dead.
Between all the pyramids, right? Avenue of the Dead. And like that, you look at an aerial view and it's like, this is 8 miles. You're like, fuck, it's pretty crazy how big it is. But then like, then you consider too that it's like, well, it housed 100,000 residents in that area that was like, based in that area. So then like that makes sense for that size.
And they all disappeared.
100,000 pretty big, and they all disappeared.
They all disappeared.
And I gotta tell you,
sorry.
No, after you.
I was gonna say, I want to also point out that Aztec, right? If you go to Mexico City, you should point out that there is parts of Mexico City that was built upon some of the great Aztec structures, right? If you go there, and of course they're all over Mexico and even farther down. But sometimes the part in Mexico City, and I can't remember the name of that structure's name, the ancient civilization, was that was kind of like a big, huge part of archaeological study, in that's where like almost a metropolis was, if in a sense, right? However, this Teotihuacan, and which includes the Pyramid of the Sun, that's where all of the Aztec culture says that's where civilization was created, right? So go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting looking, talking about, because they were saying, well, it goes back to even 180 possibly now, is like, it seems like the longer they study it, the farther back they're willing to accept it is.
Absolutely.
Like, I think generally research on the internet, they say 200 AD, and then recent documentary 100 AD, and then or way, way, way earlier.
Yeah, and there's a lot of evidence we could talk about why that is true as well, right?
Well, and it's confusing when they talk about the dating, because in the main pyramid, the pyramid of the sun, isn't there like 6 or 7 different layers of the pyramid?
there is,
Right.
yeah.
So
And
how
what's
old is the inner bottom layer? Because that one
But-
was supposed to be done with,
that was the most complex part,
right.
right? Yeah, but the hard thing is like, again, they try to put these dates on things, but stone, if you're just measuring a stone structure, how do you carbon date that, right? I mean, our dating techniques are mostly based on carbon dating, measuring differences between isotopes of carbon and other types. And so like there's no carbon aspect to that because nothing's decomposing in a sense, right? Or it's just so slow that it'll take billions of years to measure anything. So who really knows?
Yeah, I'd imagine some of it is like going to be like what they imagine where from the weather is going to be part of it.
But if that, like what Mr. Green is saying, is that the innermost part of the pyramid, right? It's like the that was the most complicated part in terms of structure manipulation. But what kind of weather is really going to get to that?
That's a good point. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
And all of that was like all those chambers that were lined with mica down there and all that sort of stuff. I don't know.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah. Like it's almost hard not to just dive right into like that, but
yeah.
Well, interesting. Like I thought it was interesting before we go into that. Just generally, I thought it was pretty interesting reading about how like there was these four the 4 ages that they defined for the
Kind
pyramid,
of like their calendar in a way, right?
And it was like each one ended with what we are interpreting as like a natural disaster.
It was every
and that's
5,000 years.
Yeah, which is crazy because that starts bringing back all like the lore that was surrounding with 2021, which is off the Mayan calendar, but it's
Or 2012,
interesting to think
right?
about.
2012.
Yeah, 2012. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
'cause we're in 2012. Got me there. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's interesting.
But was that kind of their version of the Farmer's Almanac?
I don't know, because it's kind of interesting going back to the weather, is that they have found that a lot of that structures in Teotihuacan, specifically some of the bigger structures like the Pyramid of the God and whatnot, is that there's a bunch of it underground, like 10, 12 feet of it is buried by dirt. And they're like, well, and they think that's a lot of it, right? At this point in time, it's still only like about 10% of the whole area is even like excavated. So they really don't know. And so what could cause that, right? Because it was clearly there. And then how did all this dirt get there, right? Big ass structures.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But what's weird is like, I don't want to get a little off topic here, but like a lot of the old ancient like religions and scriptures and things like this from all different religions and stuff, right? There's everywhere around the world there was this great flood. And so then you go, okay, well, that could do it, right? To some extent, that mud building up. But part of that belief system, like you were saying, with the 5,000 year cycle, the last one that happened was the water cycle in which they got flooded. So that's pretty weird, man. I mean, how do you explain the dirt? And then that's their belief system. So it ended with like the great flood of the world, which is consistent with all these other ancient stories from around the world. And that could explain why the thing is buried in like 12 feet of mud, right? But then
tsunami.
Yeah, and so it's weird because it's like the creation stories of that culture comes from that area. And so like what's really interesting, I don't know if you read that or saw it or anything, but the one in Mexico City, they reference a creation story where the Aztecs came from 7 different types of species that were created and were to be dispersed around the world. And they were the last of the 7 to come out from a cave that had 7 caverns. If you go to the Pyramid of the Sun, they found, I can't remember when, but I want to say it was like when last like 30, 40 years, a cave way inside of it, exactly 7 caverns. And then you start associating all this other stuff we're going to talk about with it. It's just pretty weird, man. It's just sometimes I feel like it's
Yeah, I mean, like,
pretty coincidental.
you know what blows my mind about the pyramids? I was reading that Pyramid of the Sun is the third largest, second largest is Giza, right? It's humongous, and the first largest is just down the road, Cholula, which I hate to admit it, but just makes me think of hot sauce immediately. But the pyramid, we've talked about pyramids in the past, multiple times, and if you're looking at the pyramids in Asia, right, all these different pyramids in South America that like they've been found in like deep in the jungle, and they're all over the world, right? It really is interesting to think about how, especially that we're at least supposing or theorizing that these were, a lot of them are generally the same time, like how that happened. I mean, one could argue, well, there's houses here and there, but everything is so different, right?
Same.
If you look at like just the normal home structures of human beings at that time across the world, very, very, very different. Yeah, they were shelter, but they're very different, but the pyramids, lots of huge similarities, and they're on the opposite sides of the world, and then if you consider some of like, I mean, like the fact that the other big mystery that we talk about often is the size of these stones and the fact in the middle of nowhere, and then all these parallels, and they're in all these different places in the world, and it suggests to me, I think it leaves a very good open case for like extraterrestrial involvement. Just, I mean, or the fact that, or possibly that we had a much higher evolved human being in those time periods, and there's a huge mystery behind that or something like that.
I gotta say this before I forget it. Speaking of that complexity and whatnot, at the Pyramid of the Sun, what is even just more, just in my opinion, makes it one of the weirdest spots of all these pyramids is that there is no evidence of written language. There is no hieroglyphs.
Yeah,
there is nothing. It's just this thing exists and that's it. And so how does an entire civilization that seems to be, there's no written language, they can't even trace back like emperors or anybody there. I mean, it's just like a mystery spot that exists for no real reason. And so that, on top of the fact that, like you said, here is a 10-ton piece of rock that is from volcanic rock that is like the type of volcanic rock that's super dense, super heavy, and they smoothed it out, made hard edges. And some speculate that if you look at the structure of the pyramid right now, those same pieces of rock that used to exist on the old structure got reused on the new structure in certain parts. Be like, we're going to reuse this rock. And it's like, well, I mean, okay, they can't, how it's just how they have no written language. That what the fuck.
I had this idea, and I don't know if you're about to just debunk it on me, but when I was watching that, like I was wondering, like, well, what if hypothetically, like these pyramids were created for extraterrestrial use initially, originally, and they were used for a certain amount of time, and then they weren't used for that anymore, and then this kind of ancient people that were like living in the vicinity of these pyramids
stumbled upon it,
and then kind of built like a more, I mean, I shouldn't use the word rudimentary, because even the outer layer of the pyramid still like baffles like science to this day. Like, how is it possible for them to, like, there's, I don't know if you've ever seen ancient, like if you ever watched a YouTube video on ancient like cutting techniques for rocks, and they basically
diamond saws.
They chisel holes all the way around this boulder in a certain spacing, and at a certain point, what happens is the rock just splits and there'll be this perfect shear. And I've seen videos of them doing it now just to show that you can do that. But it's a big difference between shearing a boulder in half perfectly. Okay, cool. You made a smooth surface. You made a smooth surface. Awesome. But then to be able to now do that and build it into bricks, and not only to build it in bricks, but some of these bricks, like in certain sections, are all identical in size.
And they weigh so much.
And they weigh so much. And then, you think about leverage and all these sorts of things. It gets to a certain point when you're looking at this volcanic rock that they cut perfectly, and it weighs between 4 and 8 tons. And then you're trying to like that like, it's not like you can get 100 dudes and gather around it and lift it up. You know what I mean? When you have so much density in a small object like that, it's baffling.
Yeah. But it brings up the whole idea of how many different versions of people have there been? Like has there been other versions that they've just wiped themselves out from some sort of, whether it's warfare, disease, natural disaster, whatever.
Right? Yeah, I totally get it. And I understand that cycle. But my question is like, okay, if we all get wiped out as a species, and there's probably going to be like some tiny percentage that's left over or something,
right?
How does it get to the point where we're able to do and build these amazing structures that are just still till this day? Like, how could they do that, right? And then they wipe out entirely, and then the new species again begins. So like, I kind of feel like that very well could be the case, right? I agree. But under the circumstances that is the case, I think some of those guys that were hella smart that stuck around could have stuck around, the few of them, and then said, hey, we're not going to let our species die out. We're going to let this all play over again, right? I mean, who knows? That could be aliens for all we know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And isn't there some equation where we lose as much knowledge as we gain?
I don't know that equation.
That like I don't know if it's an equation, but like I've heard people say that we lose as much as we gain at the same speed that we gain.
I don't know if that is true. I mean, if that's true, then maybe it happens at some part of your life, like a baby. That's not going to be true, right? Otherwise, you'd always be a baby. And then when you are little and you're growing up and you're becoming adult and your brain is becoming its brain.
But I mean just society in general, though.
Like as a whole?
Like if you look at even like how NASA put people on the moon, we would have to kind of reinvent all of that technology and information today. They couldn't go back and copy it, right?
I know what you mean. Like it might be that evidence has always been on Earth and we just never found it.
Right.
And we might find it at a time after we've kind of already figured it out without it in some way, right? Without that evidence. So is there differences? I mean, my guess is if that's the case, if what civilization like evolved and was able to travel space, they did it one way and they all die off, and another civilization did it again without like any of that knowledge, they could very well do it in a different way, I think. What do you think? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like technical way, like they might use something different, whereas the previous one used something else, but they still were able to accomplish the same feat.
Right. Yeah. And the idea that they all disappeared somehow, do they think that they were all wiped out from some type of natural disaster or disease, or was there some type of like mass migration? Because like we're seeing environmental migration now. There are certain parts of the world where people are leaving because they, there's weather change, there's
California.
There's issues with food, water, right? So they're having to move to different areas that are more hospitable. You know, could
I
it be
think-
something like
I
that?
think it
where-
could be that, but then why would they have all the interconnected, like all the different? There's so many pyramids down there, dude. Like
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
over the. I would probably guess like thousands.
Well,
is-
and there are some that they've discovered where they just thought it was a mountain.
Right, and then they figure out, oh, it's
Yeah.
not right.
Because there's trees and dirt and all that shit covering it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's enough evidence to suggest that that it's an actual pyramid.
Like, what's that legend? I can't remember, but it's like the legend of an ancient city down there somewhere that's like a
Oh,
city made
Christ.
of gold. El
We could-
Dorado, is that what it is?
We could do the whole podcast just about that.
Dude, that one. That's like the last Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah, 'cause
Basically, and that's
there-
the alien shit.
Yeah, there's been a few documentaries about anthropologists and geologists going down there and trying to find it.
They disappear. There's
Yeah.
probably some curse, dude.
Nice. No, so what's with the Black Mountain down in Australia?
It's kind of unrelated. We were talking about some other stuff, but dude, just research it, man. That shit is crazy. It's like this mountain, but the mountain is like some gigantic machine poured like billions and billions of gigantic rocks on top of each other. It's like a giant pile of rocks, like massive. And all the locals, all the ancient legends and shit will say, do not fucking go there, right? And when people do, only a few have lived to like survive after like even a matter of minutes, because what happens is this giant labyrinth and they hear like noises like miles away coming from that place where people are like losing their mind because they can't stop hearing shit. It's crazy. You gotta just watch it, man. It's kind of
So you're saying that we're going camping?
I ain't gonna cabin there. We're gonna fall into a hole into the middle of earth.
You know, I was thinking about the I forgot another Teotihuacan, whatever that we were talking about. Teotihuacan.
That one is.
It sounds like a band name for like some like emo techno group.
It does when you say it.
Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan.
But,
Teotihuacan.
you know, there was all these reports of them like seeing some type of like object, you know, flying down and landing, and like a being appeared, and all these different various gods. Do you think that, you know, I think that we're all believers and we all go in everything with like an open mind, but like, do you think that there is a possibility that like a group of dudes were just out in the woods and they had some bad mushrooms and they all tripped on the same thing and just said like, yeah, we all saw it, fuck, like, but it was really just some bad mushrooms?
What's interesting is they said that it was like shaped like a flint knife, right? Which
That's
is
what that flint knife.
right.
Yeah.
So they're explaining it like it's a flying saucer, and not to say it's impossible that there's some psilocybin going around these different tribes around the world, but you get a very common theme with the shape and size of these flying saucers, and there's no possible way of communication between these entities around the world. I mean, you're talking oceans apart, you know, and like it's just hell of a fucking coincidence, right? I mean, hell of a coincidence. It's like impossible.
You know, I think, you know, you really wonder if it's the government when we start talking about this shit. And
Or you wonder if it's that paranormal shit.
yeah,
Maybe we shouldn't be talking about Teotihuacan.
or maybe aliens are monitoring us.
They're like, you figured us out, you bastards. We're gonna beam you up tonight.
Just take me home, dude. This planet's getting too weird. I'm ready for
There's probably another
the
planet
mothership.
not that far from here. Oh, that was one part that's hella crazy about this fucking Teotihuacan, is that they hired an engineer, I believe it was in the 70s, and his job was to come in and like find a unit of measurement. Like, how did they create this? Because there's no written anything anywhere. So let's try to find a unit of measurement, because units of measurement could be anything, right? Just make a unit of measurement up, and that's it. And so what he did was he figured out, supposedly, that he figured out a unit of measurement, and all the fucking structures in that place line up exactly to the orbits of every planet in our solar system.
Yeah, that's what I was trying. I was thinking. I just didn't know how to
articulate it.
Yeah.
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 And so even to the sense that the asteroid belt, which is not visible with the naked eye, they measured that with a man-made canal, so it would match up. So they basically made a canal right there that didn't even seem like it was probably that useful, but they did it just so it was there with the asteroid belt.
But so it's not visible to the naked eye.
The asteroid belt.
Yeah. But today with all of our light pollution, because I mean, like I could dude, if you and I both go outside right now, we see maybe 30 stars,
Well, here in the city, right?
But back then, when there was no light pollution at night, right,
well,
and no pollution,
for sure.
I mean, but the entire planet, there's no cars, there's no mass industrial system just putting out shit into the atmosphere.
So you're saying that they could see the asteroid belt? Is that what you're hypothesizing?
I'm just wondering if just there was more visible universe to the naked eye back then.
I think so, but I don't think the asteroid belt, man, because think about it, like a planet is humongous, right? A star is humongous.
Right.
And all that light is all delayed, right? You're seeing light from 10 days ago or whatever the hell it is, depending on where you're looking at it. But the asteroid belt is consistent of much smaller things, right? Like asteroids. And so, yeah, if an asteroid gets close enough to us, we can see it, right? Meteor showers are kind of,
but
different
if they we've talked about how we don't know what kind of tools they had for their construction. If they have such advanced tools to carve out stone, they could have had advanced tools to observe the universe. They could have had their own version of some type of
yeah, totally, right? Yeah. Totally. It's just, I don't know. I mean, it's just everything is too nutty I could see that, right? But still at the same time, cutting a stone is a little bit different than doing optics, right? You need real crazy reflections and mirrors for that shit. But who knows? I mean, if they could do that, then they could probably do other shit for sure, right? I would think. But before I forget, that same unit of measurement that engineer figured out, that mapped out oh my God, all these structures align to the solar system orbits. Interestingly enough, right? Miles away on the top of a mountain is this other weird random pyramid that they're who knows what this thing is for. And it aligned perfectly with the Avenue of the Dead. And I think we forgot to mention, but the Avenue of the Dead is basically kind of like a long runway that is in this middle of the city, or whatever you want to call it, of the Teotihuacan.
It's the airport. So
yeah, kind of
the land,
or that main central highway kind of thing. But anyways, it's aligned perfectly this miles away. And then that kind of, they suspect that, is there some type of suggestion that there is another planet beyond Pluto that we don't know about? Because that aligns with the same system based on the same unit of measurement. And what's happening right now in our lives, scientists are starting to get a pretty strong indication that there is a planet beyond Pluto. This planet that could be orbiting sun in a very different way. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
in my perspective, dude.
Yeah. I remember listening to there's a astrophysicist who speaks on Rogan fairly often. Do you know his name, Mr. Green? I know we talked about this.
Well, there's a few, but the most popular name is Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, so he's okay. He's talking
Krauss, maybe.
No, Neil deGrasse
Tyson.
No, Tyson. So he's talking to Tyson, and he explained the story of how they found Pluto. And what was amazing to me, and I think that it's just me not thinking about it, really taking a second to rationally think about how a planet would be found, is literally they had done the equation for how planets were orbiting. I think it's how Neptune was orbiting the sun incorrectly. And So they were like, he was basically the way they were looking for him, but that gave them the indication that there might be another planet out there because of the gravity. So it's based off a mistake. And then he just started looking in space at piece by piece, way off in the distance with these telescopes, little tiny, obviously it's like, what do you call it? The cone effect, right? Where it's like, you look at your telescope, it's this big. Oh, okay, great. You look at your telescope, it's this big, but then like way off in the distance, right? It's like, it's vast, right? You're looking at, thousands of miles through your telescope, and you're looking at far in the distance. And so he's looking at these tiny pieces, and he was able to discover Pluto, this dwarf planet. And then that kind of occurred to me, but holy shit, there could be other fucking planets out there that we haven't found yet, because we're basing it off of mathematical equations, and we don't know everything about space. We don't know everything about black holes. We don't know everything. We know a lot of theory. I mean, a lot of it's correct, or it's served us well in the past, but there is 100% possibility that there are other planets in our solar system that we have not discovered yet.
Dude,
and then
go ahead.
You were mentioning that Teotihuacan, I can't do it, dude.
Teotihuacan.
Yeah.
Teotihuacan.
That it's astrologically aligned very specifically. Wasn't the pyramids in Egypt astrologically aligned?
Well,
so are the ones, and the Mayan ones are too.
I want to make the comparison with the three major pyramids in Teotihuacan and the three major pyramids in Giza.
The major period.
They are exactly aligned to the Orion's belt stars, the 3 stars. They're literally exactly aligned. And so you combine that with the fact that Teotihuacan is like the whole entire city structure is aligned with the solar system down to the asteroid belt, and there's this extra planet.
Dude,
what the fuck?
Anyways, did you see that thing? Some guy about the speed of light, and I need to confirm that, because it's something that I recently came across on the internet. But
what about the speed of light?
That the numbers of speed of light are exactly the same numbers as if you take the latitude and the longitude numbers lined up of the Giza pyramid.
Yeah, there's an exact decimal approximation. Accuracy to it is crazy.
Okay, yeah, so that's not just bullshit. Yeah, so
is that something new, or is that just something new that I'm?
It's always just never really put together, I think.
No, I mean, I don't know when that was established, but it's not like new. It's been around for decades. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's like all these places, right? And now let's get into the fact that
and you want to talk about all the different metals.
Yeah, and that's what I want to get is like, okay, one year, I can't remember what year it was, maybe the 70s, maybe before that, I don't know. There was a torrential rainstorm in the Teotihuacan, and it was so heavy that a little pothole kind of thing happened at one point inside at the bottom of the pyramid, the pyramid of the sun, and they started digging. Actually, I think it might have been the other pyramid, the pyramid of the feathered serpent, perhaps. I can't recall which one, but I think it was the serpent. But anyways, little pothole kind of started, right? Sinkhole. And they're like, archaeologists, we got to get to it. So they start digging. And then they dig and they find, what's up all these tunnels way underneath this thing? Man-made tunnels, clearly man-made, or whatever, someone made them. Start finding weird shit.
And like directly center under the pyramid.
Under the pyramid of the sun, right? Or the pyramid, whatever the hell we're talking about. I can't forget. But point is, at one point, they come across an entire pool of liquid mercury. And that is just insane, because liquid mercury doesn't just exist like that, as far as we know, on Earth. We have to go through a whole entire chemical process to create it. And it's highly toxic. And moreover, why? Why is it there? Well, mercury is a superconductor. Weird, right?
Yeah, dude, like that. Okay, so there's a lot of things about that. So then like the chambers of mica, right? We're talking about like, so maybe that's how, like, they didn't mention it in documentary I watched, but like it occurred to me, and I don't know if this has been debunked, and I just haven't found anywhere, that the maybe that the rooms that were lined with mica were utilized to get the temperatures necessary for the mercury. But the real question is not so much the how, I suppose, it's the why. Is like the biggest question to me, because like
Well, how is still crazy.
I was a big deal, but I don't feel like it's absolutely impossible. I don't feel like it's impossible that they could have figured it out. Maybe it's weird. It's really weird to consider that a primitive culture is less weird for me for them to understand astronomy, like really studying the stars and mapping the stars makes more sense to me than them figuring out a way to be able to create a cauldron that can sustain the temperatures with cinnabar to be able to create mercury, right? That to me it blows my mind. But not
Once
as
you
much.
extract the mercury, though, it's gonna be liquid mercury pretty much. It doesn't need too much after that, right? Once you extract it. But what the part is that mercury can, it's such a superconductor in the sense that, like you said, you get it at a certain temperature, it can start creating all kinds of magnetism and stuff, right? And it might get super hot or super cold. And so what's the mica do? Caves of mica to filter out the heat, the cold. I mean, mica is using technology today. Mercury is using technology today. It's just, it's too
The
nuts.
why, because I mean, like, and what was the there's like a chamber of like the first emperor in the first dynasty of China where they also found a huge thing of mercury, which is super weird. But like
But I think that's the only other place they know of on Earth that exists.
so it's crazy that it's absolutely factual, 100% indisputable, that they found a chamber of a large, very large quantity of mercury directly under the center of the pyramid. And like the our best guess, because what we use it for is for to be a superconductor, right? I mean,
And those same tunnels from that mercury chamber eventually lead to tunnels where there's mica coated walls. So mica, of course, is very good for insulation purposes, but where are you even going to get the mica?
and like,
Where
but
is it
why?
coming from?
Like, the only thing I can think of with Micah, like, is from a primitive standpoint, is if somehow they figured out over 1,000 years that you can use it to line something in order to withstand heat. If maybe they were doing, I don't know, well, on something, if you think of something more primitive that we use heat for, it'd be like blacksmithing or something. You know?
But you bring up a good point of just why,
Why?
you know,
What the
Why?
fuck?
They're doing it for, yeah, you wouldn't do that for no reason.
well, because and just from the exposure rate, you know, I can't imagine it's exactly like going into a sauna. You
For the
know,
mercury,
yeah,
it's super toxic, man.
yeah.
You know, how these fools even do that and not die, basically. Right? The fact that that happened alone,
Well, just hold your breath.
crazy. Just hold it for 20 minutes while you extract this shit.
Yeah.
Maybe they went swimming in those pools. I don't know. So a nice little pool of mercury to cleanse the skin.
And what's frustrating is that I really wonder if we're ever gonna know any of these answers. If science is ever gonna actually find out definitively why these things were built, how they built them, why they used X, Y, and Z. You know, barring some like, you know, the mothership coming down and being like, all right, we'll explain it to you guys. This is what actually happened.
Well, how about this? What's even crazier is, like, if you go from an aerial view and you look down on Teotihuacan, it looks like circuitry and like a motherboard. Right? It literally looks like if you just like took a snapshot, it looks just like a little path. And if you saw the shit where, like, you understand, hypothetically, if you kept mercury at a certain level, once that superconductivity happens, it just does its own thing. You don't need to keep feeling it. It just fuels itself, right? And so if you think about, that's kind of what we're doing in circuitry in some sense. And at this point in days, we know that there's been circuitry created where it demonstrated like years of superconductivity. No one touched it. It just does its thing. And then that's there at the pyramid. And then you think, and this is kind of far-fetched, but I had this idea go through my head, is that what if it really is just part of a circuit board?
Well, I mean, dude,
Ancient
like
alien circuit board.
I mean, yeah, and it kind of, if the theory about it being like a, like, you know, almost like a power plant or a semiconductor for them to be able to travel around Earth. It's like basically creating a way for them to cruise around Earth. Just, you know, it kind of is, and it kind of is. But then at that point, it's like, what's the purpose of that?
It is frustrating how there's just more questions than answers.
Yeah, I mean, you got and you got a lot of scientists there, because I mean, some things that we talk about, I think that you're going to only get a certain amount of like real like reputable scientists looking at. But like something like, you know, the Pyramid of the Sun, it's there. It's people want to study it, and so you have a fair amount of scientists who like looked at us and go, okay, it's here. This is crazy, and we have no idea. What about the orbs?
Oh,
The orbs?
the gold orbs that were like fool's gold orbs.
It's like pyrite. Yeah, it's pyrite orbs.
Yeah.
That they
And
found all places between 1 and 5.
hell of those in one chamber. Just what's the purpose of all that shit? Just hell of it. And I don't know if you saw, but that part where they like, so these little orbs can range in like an inch to diameter to like 6 inches or so, but then it's like scattered around the lining of walls and all this shit in this random chamber. And
there's like clay in the middle of them. So they built these things that are like
no, but in the middle
outside.
of them too, was my point, was that there is substances inside them that we don't even know what they are. We don't even know what they are.
See, that is
what is that?
Crazy to me that exists, and that's not like frontline news.
Because people are not like, holy shit.
Like, what is this? They cannot identify what element those come from, and they're like looking at like, and these are our best minds. So, yeah, that's definitely worth mentioning. That's honorable mention. And then like I thought it was cool with the pyrite and the walls. Like I could see that, dude. I could see them like lining the walls of pyrite as like, you know, Miss Sparkly chamber if there's gonna be some primitive worship bullshit. But like it's pretty weird that you have
that shit's way down there though too, right? Where it's located.
You have this chamber that goes to the center of the pyramid. Along the center, there are tons of these orbs laying all over the place. And once you get to it, there's a huge stash of mercury, which is not something you just like find and throw in there. So yeah, there is a huge question mark on, like, I can't understand how you could not be considering extraterrestrial involvement. It's like, or like we discussed before, the possibility of it being us, you know, it being like, you know, moving out into space and coming back, right?
Me and Mr. Green were talking about that earlier.
That is always the weirdest thought to me, is that like WALL-E, right? The kids movie WALL-E.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, Pixar, fantastic.
And not too far off from like our
like current status
reality now.
Yeah.
I know, they're getting bigger.
Lockdown.
But like, you know, my kids love the movies. My daughter likes movies that are stress involved. Like she's loving Willow right now. I watch it with her.
Willow, dude. That's old school.
Dude,
I watch it with her with my sons at school. My older son will, I know for an absolute fact, as soon as those weird dog things come out and eat that lady right at the beginning, I know him. He'll be like, nope. He'll say those exact words just like that. Nope. And he'll walk somewhere else, dude. And he's like, I don't want to have anything to do with this bullshit.
Whereas Willow back then was like rated G or something.
His favorite movie is WALL-E, because WALL-E is the most mellow, sweet, awesome movie. That's his jam. That being
but for adults, it could be depressing.
Yeah, it's true.
Really depressing.
Yeah.
But if you think about WALL-E, and you think about like, what if that happened and they went out to space, lived down in space, all the weird, tumultuous world of space with black holes and this and that, and how time is different, all these things. And there was some sort of connection with them coming back and leaving, coming back. You imagine, dude, can you imagine going out in space, going into like a black hole, basically going in the future of Earth time, or
Planet of the Apes, dude,
going like, 10,000 years in the future of the planet of our Earth, and then coming back to the hole. And so now you're 10,000 years, even though it's only been 2 days, but because of the relativity of time,
right?
And you come back and like basically all of humanity's been extinct. There's been a new age of what we consider now prehistoric creatures, and there are humans that
building
are
pyramids.
Yeah, building pyramids.
It's that's Planet of the Apes right there, man. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of stories throughout all the ancient scriptures for all types of cultures that happened. Breeding between aliens and humans.
What did you show your kid where you were telling me like he started crying and then he just looked at you and just said, "Can we just watch Star Wars? This is scary."
It was so Fly of the Navigator.
Oh, another great old one, dude.
We started watching that. I totally forgot, dudes. At the beginning, basically, he gets abducted and and then shows back up at the same at like 20 years later. No, I thought it was the time, but now that we watched
like when you're a kid, you don't really understand that part, right?
It's like 7 years later. But then like fucking the parents, when he goes to the house, it's somebody else's house, and then he gets to his parents and they're acting like you or I would act if we hadn't seen our kid for 7 years, and all of a sudden it's like I'm super emotional. So it's like a whole, it's almost like, they mentioned him being declared dead, and it's like he was kidnapped, and because that's like what a human, the natural human response is. And like, bro, like that's a pretty intense scene, but I never noticed it as a kid. It just kind of like, okay, we're almost the cool part with the aliens. And super intuitive, and he started watching that part, and he's like, "No, fuck this shit." He's like, and he looks at me, he's like all choked up, like because it's a kidnapping scene. And he's like, "I don't want to watch this. Can we watch Star Wars?" I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, of course, man." But my daughter, I could put for. I mean, we don't obviously. I don't let her watch anything like Willow's about the tip of the sword. But like I could literally put Freddy Krueger on and she'd be like,
so she's
That's like my
be,
young daughter, dude.
She's gonna be the one that you watch all the horror flicks with.
Oh, for sure, dude, for sure. She will. And then like he really favors me in a lot of ways, but that way he definitely like real sensitive. But